It is April 30th, 1997, US Air Arena in Landover, Maryland. And look, I'm not saying this place was a dump, but it makes the old Boston Garden look like the Taj Mahal. The kind of arena where you could practically smell the decades of spilled beer through your TV. The Washington Bullets, down 2-0 to the Bulls and desperately trying to extend their playoff lives, somehow have a 95-94 lead with seconds remaining. Michael Jordan, the basketball god who dropped 55 on these same Bullets 3 days earlier, has the ball. Of course he does. It is like watching a horror movie where you know the teenager shouldn't go into the basement, but they always do. The Bullets are that teenager. Jordan is whatever is waiting in the basement. He drives, rises up, and then something weird happens. He loses the ball. The greatest clutch performer in basketball history just loses the ball. It floats in the air like a balloon that slipped from a child's hand. You know how this ends for Washington. You just don't know how it ends. Let me take you back to April 1997. The Spice Girls were dominating the charts. Austin Powers had just hit theaters, and the Chicago Bulls were putting together one of the most ridiculous 2-year runs in sports history. These weren't just the defending champions who went 72-10 the previous season. They were a global phenomenon. The Beatles with high tops, 69-13 in 96-97. That is a .841 winning percentage, which is basically what happens when you're playing NBA Jam with cheat codes on. The Bulls of this era didn't just beat you. They broke your spirit, stole your girlfriend, and make you question your life choices. Their combined 141-23 record over 2 seasons is still the best 2-year stretch ever. And it is not particularly close. When the Bulls arrived in your city, it wasn't a game, it was an event. Like when Queen or Springsteen comes to town and even your mom wants tickets. They were rock stars, and as Rodman put it is like circuses coming to town. We're like a road show. Everybody wants to see Michael, Scotty, and Dennis. And their first round opponent, the Washington Bullets, who were essentially the basketball equivalent of a 90s one-hit wonder. You know, like they had their moment, but nobody was confusing them with the New York Knicks or Miami Heat. Don't get me wrong, the Bullets were actually interesting, and that could have been something special under different circumstances kind of way. They had Chris Webber and Juwan Howard, 2/5 of Michigan's Fab Five, reunited and making a combined $300 million. They had Rod Strickland, who's basically the Pulp Fiction of point guards, critically acclaimed but somehow never got the mainstream recognition he deserved. And they had George Muresan, the 7'7" Romanian giant who would later star in possibly worst basketball movie ever made, My Giant, with Billy Crystal. I'm still not convinced this movie wasn't just an elaborate prank on American audiences. The Bullets had been terrible for nearly a decade. Their last playoff appearance came in 1988, when Jordan was still wearing short shorts, and most of us thought Bon Jovi was cool. But after mid-season coaching change, bringing in Bernie Bickerstaff to replace Jim Lennon, they went 22-13 down the stretch. They sneaked in the playoffs on the final day, beating Cleveland in a game that mattered only because someone had to be sacrificial lamb for Chicago in round 1. It is like winning a contest where the prize is getting punched by Mike Tyson. Congratulations. The whole Webber-Howard reunion was fascinating. These guys were polar opposites who somehow became the best friends at Michigan. Webber was the flashy, charismatic superstar from Detroit with the $1 million smile. Howard was the serious, no-nonsense grinder from Chicago's South Side who never cracked a joke that wasn't immediately followed by just kidding. They were basketball's odd couple, Felix and Oscar with 40-inch verticals, Batman and Robin without the tights, They shaved clothes, hopes, dreams, and famously changed the college basketball forever with their baggy shorts and black socks when they arrived at Michigan. It is great sharing this with Chris, Howard said before the Bulls series. The two of us have been through so much together. Their NBA journeys hadn't exactly been smooth sailing. Weber had that disastrous season in Golden State where he basically got into a death match with Coach Don Nelson. Howard had the infamous free agency saga where he signed with Miami, cried about leaving Washington, then had to return when the league voided the Heat deal because of some salary cap voodoo. But now they were back together, like when your favorite band reunites for one last tour, except this tour was opening for the Beatles in their prime. The crazy thing about the 1997 Bulls is that Jordan and Pippen had reached this weird basketball nirvana where they were basically basketball soulmates. Remember in Pulp Fiction when John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson are just completely in sync during the apartment scene? That was Jordan and Pippen except for 48 minutes every night for years. This wasn't just a professional relationship anymore. These guys had genuinely become friends. Real friends. The "I'll give you my Ferrari because you want it" kind of friends. No, seriously, Jordan straight up gave Pippen his Ferrari when Pip admired it, taking Scotty's Porsche in return, even though the Ferrari was worth twice as much. "It is nothing you wouldn't do for your brother," Jordan said, making the rest of us question our own friendships. When Jordan returned from his baseball hiatus in 1995, he didn't just come back for championships. He came back for Pippen. Scotty was definitely one of the reasons I came back, Jordan admitted. I asked him how it was, how he felt, and how he was suffering. I could feel he wanted me back basketball-wise and as a friend. And I missed them too. After a decade together, these guys had seen everything. Their lockers had moved closer over the years, so had their seats on the plane. They shared breakfast, cigars, card games. Even their warm-up routines were in sync, like they were auditioning for the basketball Olympics. We would probably never would have been champions without each other, Pippen reflected, in what might be the understatement of the century. Game 1 at the United Center was about as pretty as Shaq free throw. The Bulls shot 38 from the field and won anyway because they were the Bulls. The Bullets came out jittery like teenagers on a first date. Weber picked up his first foul at just 18 seconds into the game trying to block a Jason Caffey jumper. That is like getting a parking ticket while still buckling your seatbelt. The real story was the return of both Dennis Rodman and Tony Kukoc from extended absences. Rodman had missed the final 13 games with knee sprain. Kukoc had a foot injury that made him move like he was wearing cement shoes. Their returns were about as smooth as dial-up internet. Kukoc shot an abysmal 1 for 10. Rodman inevitably got himself ejected with 6:23 remaining after picking up his second technical from referee Steve Javi. The referees hadn't seen Dennis in a while and he hadn't seen the refs in a while. Jordan explained afterward with the patience of a kindergarten teacher. He has to learn all over again how to tighten his reins. Despite Weber's foul trouble limiting him to 24 minutes, the Bullets hung around. They were down just 50-49 early in the third quarter before the Bulls gradually pulled away. Steve Kerr hit some dagger threes, Jordan scored 29, and the Bulls took Game 1 98-86. After the game, Weber and Howard were basically auditioning for roles in the Crucible, acting like every whistle was a personal affront to their families. But this wasn't just a rookie refs being intimidated by the Bulls' mystique. This was the Bullets discovering the difference between the regular season basketball and playoff intensity against the gold standard. Meanwhile, Dennis Rodman was causing his usual off-court chaos. His second book, Walk on the Wild Side, was set to be released during the series because of course it was. Rodman never met a spotlight he didn't try to steal, reposition, and then bathe in. The book was classic Rodman. He appeared nude on the cover with tiger stripe body paint, criticized everyone from the Bulls management to teammates to Shaq, who he said might as well dress up as a Pepsi can when he plays, and generally did everything possible to ensure the Bulls PR staff needed therapy. The book was so outrageous that Oprah Winfrey, who had welcomed Rodman for his first book, cancelled his appearance, saying it will be inappropriate to promote it to our viewers. When you're too controversial for Oprah in the 90s, you reached a special level of notoriety. All this was happening while Rodman was trying to find his rhythm on the court after missing significant time. His knee brace was bothering him. His conditioning was off, and he looked like a role player than the rebounding alien who led the league for 6 straight seasons. Game 2 wasn't just a basketball game, it was performance art. It was Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. It was Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk for the first time. It was Jordan being Jordan when Jordan needed the most Jordan he could be. MJ dropped 55 points on 22 of 35 shooting, including 20 of the Bulls' 23 fourth quarter points. This wasn't just scoring, this was an assassin methodically executing a hit in broad daylight while 20,000 people watched and millions more witnessed it on TV. The Bullets actually led 65-58 at halftime, which is like having a lead on Godzilla. He decides to start trying. Washington was hitting shots, playing with confidence, and genuinely looking like they belonged on the same court. Then Jordan decided enough was enough. Poor Calbert Cheaney, tasked with guarding Jordan, played textbook defense, hand in the face, proper positioning, everything his coaches had ever taught him. It made absolutely no difference. At one point, Cheaney even asked Jordan, "Aren't you tired yet?" Jordan's response, "Have we won yet? Then I ain't tired." That exchange tells you everything you need to know about why Jordan is Jordan and why the rest of us merely spectators in his universe. The Bulls won 109-104 to take a commanding 2-0 lead, but cracks were showing. Beyond Jordan's heroics, the sporting cast was struggling. Kukoc couldn't move laterally enough to guard a fire hydrant, allowing Tracy Murray to score 22 points. Rodman played 13 minutes in the first half and had just 1 rebound when Webber accidentally tipped the ball into Bulls basket. What's so frustrating is not only does he go by 3 defenders, but he seems to be the only one doing anything, Webber said afterward. Not only does he get the 55 points, but he seems to be the sole reason they won. He wasn't wrong. As the series shifted to US Air Arena for Game 3, the Bullets remained defiant in that way teams always are right before they get eliminated. It's like watching someone in quicksand insisting they're fine while reaching for a branch. "We are not here just to learn," Webber insisted. "We are here to prove something first." Meanwhile, Phil Jackson was so concerned about the potential Game 3 loss that he practically yawned when discussing it, saying a loss would be nothing earth-shaking or mind-shattering. The Bulls could simply use the energy level output Friday night to kind of get our game tuned. This is what we call in the business a psychological advantage. When one team is fighting for their playoff lives and the other is treating the potential loss like a minor inconvenience, it is not exactly a level playing field. Jackson, basketball's Zen Master Jedi Knight, had started wearing his championship ring during the playoffs. A tradition he maintained throughout his coaching career. It was his not-so-subtle reminder to everyone, "I've been here before, many times, you haven't." But something interesting was happening. Despite being down 0-2, the Bullets were gaining confidence, and now they were heading home to a crowd that hadn't seen playoff basketball since the Reagan administration. April 30th, 1997, Game 3. The Bullets came out like they'd been shot out of a cannon, racing to a 14-2 lead as the home crowd, including Vice President Al Gore, lost their minds. Phil Jackson, in his typical fashion, refused to call timeout. Why? Because Phil Jackson isn't like normal coaches. He wants his team to feel the insecurity and uncertainty and have to deal with it. It is like parenting by throwing your kid into the deep end to teach swimming. By the quarter's end, the Bulls had weathered the storm. Washington led just 30-29. The game swung back and forth like a playground match with no refs. Tracy Murray was unconscious off the Bullets bench. Juwan Howard was playing the game of his life. The Bullets led 65-58 at halftime, and a Game 4 seemed like a distinct possibility. But the third quarter is when championship teams typically make their move. The Bulls tightened the defensive screws, forced turnovers, and slowed the pace. It is what champions do. They adjust, they respond, they remind you why they're wearing the crown. Yet with 5:14 left in the game, Chris Webber slammed home a dunk to give Washington a 90-81 lead. The arena was shaking. The Bullets were less than 5 minutes from forcing a Game 4 and making this a legitimate series. And then Michael Jordan. Again. Jordan scored 14 of his 28 points in the fourth quarter, including 10 during a crucial stretch that brought the Bulls back after Juwan Howard hit 2 free throws to give Washington a 95-94 lead with seconds remaining. The stage was set for our opening moment. Jordan drove, lost the ball, and Scottie Pippen, forever in Jordan's shadow despite being one of the 50 greatest ever, grabbed it and attacked the basket. He rose over Calbert Cheaney and threw down a dunk with authority, crashing hard to the floor afterward. A few years back, I'd have gotten the ball and looked for Michael to take the big shot, Pippen said afterward, acknowledging his evolution, but the opportunity presented itself and I took it to the basket hard. 96-95 Bulls. Cheaney's last second shot fell short, series over, another sweep for the Bulls. For Pippen, this was vindication. Remember, this was the guy who refused to go into playoff game in '94 when Phil Jackson designed the final shot for Tony Kukoc instead of him. Now here he was, delivering when it matters the most. I'd rather deal with the pain tomorrow than losing today, Pippen said, referencing his hard fall that would probably have sidelined a normal human for weeks. We lost to a very good basketball team, the best basketball team, Bickerstaff said afterward, in what might be the understatement of the century. We want them to remember the feeling. Oh, they'd remember alright. The following season, the franchise officially changed their name from the Bullets to the Wizards, ending a 35-year era. Within a few years, that promising core was dismantled like Lego set a toddler's birthday party. Webber was shipped to Sacramento the next year, where he eventually led the Kings to the brink of a title before the Lakers and some questionable officiating in the 2002 stopped them. Howard bounced to the Denver and then Dallas. Strickland's career became a journeyman style. The Bulls, they kept rolling. They dispatched Atlanta in the second round, survived Miami in the conference finals, and then defeated Utah in 6 games to capture their 5th title in 7 years. Lather, rinse, repeat. But behind the scenes, the dynasty was beginning to crumble like Roman Empire after one too many orgies. Jordan was explicitly tying his future to Jackson's, telling the Chicago Tribune, "If Phil's not back, I'm not playing." The clock was ticking. Here's the thing about 1997 Bulls Bullets series. The box score says sweep, but that doesn't tell the real story. The Bullets weren't just another speed bump on Chicago's highway to a championship. They pushed the Bulls in all 3 games. They led late in Game 3. They forced Jordan to go supernova. It reminds me one of those heavyweight boxing matches where the champion retains the title but the challenger gains respect just for surviving. The Bullets didn't win a game, but they earned respect. This series also represented the ultimate passing of the torch that never actually got passed. Webber and Howard, those college phenoms, were supposed to be the future of the NBA. Jordan and Pippen were supposedly in the twilight of their dominance, yet here were the veterans, teaching the young guns that talent alone isn't enough. For the Bullets Wizards franchise, this series was both their arrival and their farewell tour, the culmination of a rebuilding effort, and the last hurrah of a team name with deep NBA history. It is like they finally got invited to the cool kids party just as high school was ending. For the Bulls, it was another step toward immortality, another test passed on the road to a fifth championship. And for Jordan and Pippen, it was further proof that their partnership, now as much a genuine friendship as a professional relationship, remained the foundation of basketball's greatest dynasty. In the end, when Cheney's final shot fell short, it felt like the only possible outcome. Some things in sports are simply meant to be. The Bulls were meant to win. The Bullets were meant to learn. And Michael Jordan, he was meant to remind everyone that no matter how good you think you are, how promising your future looks, or how loud your home crowd gets, he is better, always has been, always will be. For Old School B-Ball, thanks for watching.